it's such a pleasure to see people that were my students and to come back here. And there was a wonderful introduction, very, very accurate. The Haas School, which is a brand name school, any way you cut it. I mean, I know a lot of people that don't even get in there and get into other places. It actually requires, because of our illustrious past dean, Rich Lyons, who's my hero, we want you to be brilliant, a brilliant economist, want you to be a brilliant real estate person, want you to be a brilliant CEO, but boy, you better become a decent human being, or you're not going to get your MBA. And Rich basically held people's feet to the fire, and we have some of the most successful CEOs in all the brand name companies that we use their products every day, senior vice presidents. And it's interesting to note that the employee retention, I don't think people understand how much it costs when a really great mind walks out of ABC company. My buddies at McKinsey said, just call it an ABC company and you'll be covered with all the legal stuff and stuff. So when somebody actually walks out of ABC company, a great, great mind, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And people don't leave companies, they leave managers. They leave me, they leave you, they leave your friends, etc. People want to be treated a certain way, particularly the California crowd. Because basically, and it's not that we're touchy-feely woo-woo and we're going to wear our, necklaces, but what I'm really saying is we are very privileged because we live in an area where you just have to cross the street to another brand name company 40 minutes from here, and the salaries are the same, and you may find a manager who really cares about you and a manager who's guiding your career. We have some wonderful doctors with us this afternoon who are in my Coaching Institute, which started yesterday. All the good things are starting at the same time. The Alumni Weekend, the game tonight, the Coaching Institute, and they're here to become coaches for their people, coaches for the hospital. It's a whole new game. Just before I introduce my great colleague, Kurtis Auguste, I'll just tell you how the whole thing happened. So I'm minding my own business. I've taught here for 10 years. I get the best job in the world, best dean in the world, no complaints. Minding my own business at the immersion for the Executive MBA program, which was held up at Silverado, which was great fun because the wine country and great restaurants and wine and great students. Well, I mean, I'll be honest, it was kind of like a paid vacation, but we work hard there. And this doctor is in the program. He's doing his MBA, and he says to me, can I buy you a drink later? I need to talk. I said, sure, anybody can buy me a drink. That's fine. And so his name's Wolfgang Stair, class of 2016. And he sits down and he says, I just want to tell you that this is the work we need in the hospital. I said, you must be kidding. Where do you work? He said, Children's. I said, I had my tonsils out there. I can still see my grandmother down there, everyone waving, more ice cream than I could ever hope to have. I said, it was wonderful. He says, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Will you bring your team there? I said, if they really want to work. I've never heard about that. Healthcare, me in healthcare? Come on, I work in, high tech and this kind of stuff. But he said, I promise you the relationships around the operating room, the relationships between members of staff, doctors, nurses, tech, administration, you have no idea. I said, okay, Wolfgang, let's go for it. And that's actually what happened. And we started an incredible movement of the Haas leadership communications work inside Children's Hospital, which has since moved other places. That's all that I'm going to say. I'm going to bring Dr. Auguste up here, give him a big, big round of applause. Welcome to Berkeley. And he'll tell you more from the side of his side of the house, what it's actually all about, and then I'll do a little work with you and you'll get to go to the game.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for having me. Thank you for that introduction, Mark. I thought what would make the most sense is if I start out by giving you guys a little bit of background about me, about where I'm from, where I grew up, and where my family's from. So my family is from Trinidad and Tobago, the last island in the chain, the Caribbean chain, right tucked up in a little cove of Venezuela. And both my parents, my mom's side and my dad's side, were part of huge families. So my mom was one of 10, my dad was one of 7. And the two grandparents independently decided that to give their kids the best opportunity, it was time to pick them all up and bring them to New York. My parents had actually met in Trinidad and started dating. And the timing is a little fuzzy, but somewhere along the lines, my mom and dad got together as late teens and migrated to Brooklyn, and I just sort of appeared. So I don't question the timing anymore, but they got together. But it's important you hear about Trinidad, first of all, because it's really just a tiny little island, and it's made many advances, but in many ways it's still a third world country and carries with it some third world mentalities. But also, these are island people that raised me, and there were some very core principles of just treating other people with respect. It doesn't really matter what walk of life you may be from. It's important that you are always showing them how much you care about them or respect them. It doesn't matter what kind of titles you have. So when I hear these introductions about all these titles that I've acquired over the years, it kind of makes me cringe because that's not really in keeping with how I was brought up. So it's important you hear that to set the stage that when I attend a session like what you're hearing about, I may be a little bit different in that regard. And even though I have all these letters and all these titles behind my name, I may be a bit more receptive to some things like this. But I think that's important for some of the early adopters of some of these workshops to be those kinds of people who are open-minded, coming in with an open mind. So that's the Trinidad part. The other part is my parents. They were effectively late teenagers when they were getting this little family together and ended up in Brooklyn. And unfortunately, as many fast-moving relationships go, their marriage didn't last, and they ended up getting divorced when I was 9. And so that was a very tumultuous time for me as a 9-year-old when all my friends were thinking about what kind of toys they wanted, what kind of birthday parties they want to plan. I was worried about what kind of scene there would be in my home when I went back home, and who would I be living with next week, and will I ever get to see my mom or my dad again if there's a custody issue, and all these things that 9-year-olds really shouldn't be thinking about. So it was a very emotional time for me, and as a reason why I'm just curious, just by show of hands, how many in this audience have experienced divorce, either directly or indirectly, family members, friends, firsthand? How many of you just, okay, all right. So there's a fair amount of you in the audience, if you so if you've seen it or witnessed it or even lived it, it's something you carry with you forever and ever. And so fast forward now many, many years. I'm a physician, I'm a surgeon, I'm in hospital leadership. And UCSF, Benioff Children's Hospital, and Children's Hospital Oakland had been living parallel lives. They were in parallel universes. And the leadership thought it would be a good idea for us to join forces to become an even better children's hospital, which on the periphery sounds like a fantastic idea, especially from the vantage point of leadership. It's a different story, though, when you get down to the nitty-gritty details of the actual folks in the trenches, because the practice models and the cultures in the hallways of Children's Hospital Oakland and UCSF Benioff Children's in San Francisco are very, very different. If you didn't know this, Oakland Children's was effectively a series of private practices that were working within the Children's Hospital. UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital is an academic setting where you're all university employees, and we have very different focuses. I was 50-50, so since 2008 I've been on staff in both. But when I'm walking the halls at UCSF, I'm an academic neurosurgeon, and of course I am performing brain surgery on kids, but I'm also publishing my results. I'm trying to write grants for those results, and our compensation model is a university compensation model, and I'll leave it at that. When I'm over in Children's Hospital Oakland, it's a private practice, and you're much more worried about the throughput of patients and quality control, and are my customers happy, both the patients and the referring docs. And these are very different cultures. So when the hospitals decided to merge together, there are some significant growing pains. One of my predecessors, or one of my colleagues, my good friend Dr. Wolfgang Stehr, was part of the leadership that was helping shepherd this process together, which I was also part of. And I think the Coaching Institute left a huge impression, because some of the difficulties we were having with integrating these two worlds could have really benefited from some of the core lessons that the Institute teaches. So I actually participated in this program. And I'll take a step back and say there's a reason why I chose medicine, first of all. I was very scientific growing up and going through school. I always gravitated towards the sciences. There was an appeal to me of having a problem and just scientifically coming to a solution. For example, I do neurosurgery. Tumor in the brain. Go get the tumor. How easy is that? That's very easy to me. And I think it makes sense. And I gravitated away from the other kinds of professions where there's a lot of talking and a lot of rubbing elbows, and you're shaking hands, and this deal is happening because I like this person, and that just did not appeal to me. I just give me a tumor. Just give me a tumor. Okay. And so we work our way towards our destinies, and I felt like I had made the right choice for the right reasons. And yet I'm living in this scientific world where it's cut and dry, it's brain tumor in, brain tumor out. And what I'm finding, the longer I'm in it, is that so many of these issues of communication and interacting with other people and getting viewpoints and ideas aligned are spilling over into my scientific world. Because despite the fact that I want this to be just very cut and dry and scientific, that's not necessarily how a hospital runs. That's not necessarily how a successful medical practice runs. There are significant business issues that have to be taken care of, and they depend upon good communication. Let's just focus on the operating room for a second. I'm showing some scenes from our hospital, my operating room, and I think that surgery in the operating room is an extreme example of this hierarchical environment that's in a hospital. It has to be that way in my operating room. If there's a room full of 10 people and there's a kid bleeding on the operating table, we can't have 10 voices screaming out at the same time. There has to be a captain of the ship. There has to be someone who has a clear idea of the steps we need to go, and then we sort of have to fill in one by one. And it shouldn't be an ego thing, but after a while, when you come to work and every day you're barking out orders, and after a while you're one of the other members of the team who come to work every day and you're listening to people barking out orders, over time we develop these silos, these independent worlds of lack of communication. Someone's always used to being the speaker, and someone's always used to being the listener, and that's all well and good in an acute trauma setting, but not necessarily good about how to get through the business day, the work day in a hospital. And that's the OR, but there are elements of that in every other walk of medical life, and it can spill all the way up into a hospital leadership, and that's a problem. So, at the OR level, at the ward level, at the hospital level, I came to realize that, man, if only we knew how to talk better and communicate better, I think a lot of the issues and the personality confrontations would go away. And that's where the coaching sessions that we had were really, really helpful. So now let's talk a little bit more about this integration that's happening. The reason why I told you about my parents was because it was an emotional thing. And it's this situation where you have, as a child in a divorced family, you have these two people that you love very, very dearly, and they are separated, and you're forced to accept that. In my situation, we had these two entities that I love dearly, and now they are being forced together. It was like my parents' divorce in reverse. That's the best way I can describe the integration here and there. Not always. I mean, there are parts of our integration that have gone very smoothly, that were very straightforward, but there are many elements. The most difficult ones are the ones where we are forcing together two different worlds, and we need to have a way to communicate better. So let me talk to you about how the Coaching Institute really made a difference here. It was a revelation for me as I was accepting that in order to be a better doctor, I have to embrace some of the core principles of communication that live and exist and thrive in the business world. When we participated in this, it was a select group of people. Because I had these titles and I have constituents beneath me to disseminate information to, I was an invited guest to one of the earliest sessions through the Coaching Institute at Children's Hospital. And we got together, and I think just us getting together, first of all, was key, was critical. It wasn't actually on site. It wasn't actually in the hospital. I told you that our world is very hierarchical. I told you that our world is very siloed off. I mean, just fundamentally, I walk into the hospital and I'm wearing my white coat and I'm wearing my scrubs and I'm wearing my surgeon's cap. Without saying a word, we've already set the stage about who I am and how my words will be received and what my expectations are for any communication I engage on, versus someone who shows up, holding a broom, and wearing their janitorial outfit. Again, no words are spoken, and yet it sets the stage for a conversation that may go one way or another. If we do a coaching institute session, then we're off-site, we all come, we're plain clothes, and you wouldn't be able to tell just looking around the table who's what and what role do you play. And honestly, when I got together in that session, there were quite a few members of our group that I had never met before. And it's partly because I live in the operating room and I don't live in all the other parts of the hospital, and that's the beauty of it. So many times when you have to engage upon difficult conversations with people, it's you come in with all these ideas, this baggage, this framework. You're wearing your armor. You are siloed off. By separating us and coming around a table for a common goal, it just is a hard reboot. It sets the stage for us to be able to talk. And if you don't achieve anything other than that from your coaching sessions, I feel you've already kind of won the game, because you need to have this hard reboot to have difficult conversations. You need to have a little bit of an idea that I'm going to, for just a little bit, listen to what this other person is saying. It doesn't really matter where they come from. So our group was made up of surgeons, nurses, administrators from all different departments. And in the course of our exercises, you come to appreciate that, oh man, there are so many more things that make us similar than make us different. There are so many things and ideas that we share, and it doesn't really matter that I'm a surgeon and he's a janitor. I'm a dad, you're a dad. I care about these kids, you care about these kids. And hour by hour, little by little, you are slowly getting drawn together. And you come to appreciate each other on a very different level. And those are things that last and persist. These are people who I didn't know before the session, and then once the sessions were over, for weeks and months later, we'd see each other in the hallways, and we just had this connection. And if you're able to establish that kind of culture of, okay, we're all in this together, and there's no other environment more important for that to happen, in my opinion, than a children's hospital, when it's not really about what I want and what you want, it's about what these kids need. I think it's such a critical thing to have, where we're all leveled out on the same page with the same vision, and so it was a very, very valuable experience for me. So I just wanted to share kind of where I come from and what my experience has been, and I'm hopeful that you get to experience that same thing at some point, and I'd love to stay for a little bit and answer any questions you may have. So thank you.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how early you think this leadership training and communication needs to start, because very often that hierarchy is kind of established when you're 18 years old, thinking about pre-med, and you are just tearing through a lot of classes, trying to ace the MCAT to get into medical school. And so you lose a lot of that kind of qualitative leadership experience from an early age.
Well, I think for me, it's very important to not look at this training as a very detailed, very clear guidebook for life. A situation comes up and you pull out your little notebook and you go to page 16 because page 16 says, this is how I solve this problem. That's not really what this was for me. This was more about core principles of how we talk to each other and how you relate to each other. And it's funny because I don't know if there isn't a too early point to plug this in. It's kind of like when I think about my neurosurgical training, my residency, I can look at the same aneurysm surgery as a first-year intern, as a mid-level resident, as a chief resident, and now as a faculty member, and I can see very different things from the same exact film reel, because you're just at different stages of your own evolution, your own development, and so you're going to pull different lessons out of it. And so I don't know that there is a wrong time or a better time, or in fact, I think that if it was up to me, I think there would be a regular kind of reboot, recharge, Let's review some of these core principles again and see how they can plug into your life at this stage of the game and at this stage of the game and this. So I don't really. It's not there aren't specific things that you're going to take home that you're going to write down. It's more about it just equips you better to take on different challenges at different parts of your growth.
Hi, I was really interested in your layout of the differences between the companies or the hospitals. I have a question for you. I'm looking for a tip. I have this national company that we're supposed to be integrating. We're brand new to each other. What's the tip to ingratiate or get the others to appreciate me or vice versa so that we can move forward in communication? Do you have a tip?
Kurtis, I'll let you take that one all on your own.
Yeah. You do know I'm a brain surgeon, right? Tip. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. I meant to say a little bit more about this concept that we're a lot more alike than we are different than we care to think. Especially in this country, in this climate, and all the things that are going on right now. It seems like there are more and more things that are driving us apart and separating us and making us think I'm that much more different than that guy. When in reality, and you come to appreciate it when you have when sessions like these happen, is you just keep hearing these themes. It's like this guy looks nothing like me, or this gal looks nothing like me, and our ages are so different, and yet we're talking about the same things, and you need a forum. You need a platform for these similarities to come out, so that you can just appreciate each other as human beings first and foremost. And we'll worry about the nitty-gritty about your preferences of ice cream flavor later. But just the fundamental things of I want to come to work, I want to do a good job, I want our endeavor to be the best endeavor there ever was. And I really truly care about individuals X, Y, and Z. And these are very, very fundamental core things that very few people will argue against. And I think if that's your foundation, if that's how you're starting, a lot of the other stuff kind of falls into place.
Reason I'm at the Coaching Institute is that I'm trying to help address the existential question of how do physicians and hospitals partner together for success. So tell me your experience in working with the corporate C-suite culture and how you think physicians who are interested in this can impact that for the benefit of the patients.
Yeah, man, it's a tough nut to crack, and I think it does go back to we're looking at the world through very different lenses, and I can tell individuals who haven't had sessions like these from those who have, because when they open their mouth from the business side, numbers start coming out, and figures start coming out, and quotas start coming out, and all these things start coming out, and it just makes my head spin because I care about this stuff too because we got to keep the doors open, we got to keep the lights on, but that's not for me. That's not the business that we're in. If that is what you're hyper focused on, and you're not willing to accept that. We need to work harder on seeing each other's viewpoints because from the physician's standpoint, it's our patients that everything is rooted in, and we're starting at different branch points. I don't know that I have an easy answer to that, or that I can't say that we've solved that problem yet. Even having had exposure, because our story is still evolving, and we haven't had the luxury of having these kinds of sessions, these kinds of institutes, workshops for everyone. And I think, even though that would be my dream for our hospitals, I think it's going to take a while for us to get that kind of exposure to our hospital. Until then, we're going to struggle. We're going to struggle with that issue of, but you're just not seeing it the way I'm seeing it. These are very, very different worlds, and depending on who you ask, one is more powerful than the other, and it's a work in progress. I don't have an easy, we figured this out, and it's been awesome kind of response. It's not. It's a struggle. But that's true of all of our personal interactions. You could say that for any relationship that you have. is that if you think you just plug in, a weekend here and a work weekend there, and we're good, you've got it all wrong. This is something you got to keep at for the rest, of your
Ongoing
working
work,
time,
yeah.
or the rest of your marriage. You can make this analogy any way you want. It's a work in progress. Yeah.
And this is our final question.
One more, and then we'll take as many questions as you want at the end.
I've had it both ways. I've been both surgeon and I've had neurosurgery upon myself. And one of the things I've discovered over time is when it comes to communication, the patient is, as you have discussed oftentimes, not on the same wavelength with the doctor. And I think that understanding, from my experience, has a lot to do with repetition, but I'm wondering the degree toward which audio-visual aids, such as films and other things preceding the surgery and so forth, just to make sure that the patient is understanding at the same level that you're trying to project if this is beneficial.
It is, and we could spend a whole weekend talking about the best ways to communicate information to patients. But I have very strong opinions and viewpoints on that matter because you have to know your audience, because there are certain patients and families who will come to us and need that and require that. It's like, I cannot make this decision until I have seen and read every last textbook, every last web page, and you've given me every statistic I could possibly. And I got to compare your responses to experts at Harvard and Hopkins. And there's going to be those, and then there are going to be, more than you think, a large proportion of patients and families who say, I just want you to take care of me. I just want you to take care of my baby. And so if you're talking to these different audiences, you need different tools. If I'm talking to this audience, then yeah, I'm going to be very heavy on the science and the audio visuals, and I'm actually going to spend a lot more time and repeat back to me. I just want to make sure I'm going to stop there for a second. Is everything just clear there? Did you understand? And if I ask you a few questions, would you be able to answer them correctly just to make sure that you got it? And I would do. For this family, it's more about, look, I'll spend some time talking to you about the science, but the reality is, just for a little while, this little baby is my baby, and I'll take care of this baby as if it's one of my own. And then as soon as I'm done, I'll give him right back to you. And we're in this together. It's like, I can't promise you we're gonna solve every problem or fix this disease, but you and I are in this together, and we're gonna go down swinging. And we're in this together, kind of thing. So, the baby and all that stuff, it really matters. But for healthcare and for healthcare and kids, unless you have that connection that this is my baby, not the science, I think that you're going to miss the boat on a lot of the families.
Great. Let's give a big, big hand. Thank you so much. And we're going to do more. I mean, the challenge is in an hour to tell you about 3 years of work, which is actually not easy. But I'll just do a little bit. Kurtis has been unbelievable, leading neurosurgeon, many doctors, many nurses. And what he's talking about is that we're talking about what we do here to train our MBA students who come from the best schools. You know the whole story. Columbia, Harvard, our friends down the street, 40 miles, University Avenue, you would say. Oh, that's well, we like them. I don't know if they like us, but anyway, it's fine. But I'm just saying, we come from the best schools. And yet there's still a communication problem. People don't feel they're very good listeners. They can't find the empathy. And they're not all doctors. Some of them are like high-tech people, already have their jobs on El Camino Real. They say, I just don't listen. I don't often express empathy. I don't express support towards people. My voice is so low, nobody can hear me. I want to connect to people. I want to stop being so judgmental. That's what they say. My 700 students, I mean, I'm old enough to be their bloody grandfather, but I call it all my children. The deal is they all come in kicking and screaming. We don't want to do a class like this. Give us another econ class. Give us another hard skills. And it turns out to be their favorite class. Because what they didn't realize, it's all about you. It's about you getting better. You becoming a great listener, you becoming a good speaker, you becoming an impassioned, passionate communicator. So it's exactly what Kurtis is talking about here. Just one little vignette, and I want to show you a couple of the favorite exercises of the nurses and the doctors and the technicians and the guards. The guards at Children's are my favorite people in the world, because I asked them with these faces, what's wrong? They said, what's wrong with you? Why are you asking? I said, you look so angry. They said, oh no, I'm not angry. It's just I feel invisible. You do? My God, you're not letting me up the thing. Yes, sir, you're going to have your badge. But he said, you're the first person that's ever talked to me and asked me how I felt. And that was data for me. That was data. He's doing his job. She's doing her job the best they can. And it's a high security deal. Hospitals are. And the idea that you're not interested in me, I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. I don't feel recognized, and I'd like to make a contribution, but you won't let me because you don't invite me to the big stuff. I get to just come to the Christmas party and have some, kind of spoiled tomato sandwich and a drink. But I'd like to really contribute to this place, and we have all the studies at Berkeley. You treat people the right way, productivity goes crazy. We have it in hard data. You treat people a certain way, they will be there forever. You treat them like they don't matter, they're looking at their watch, they'll be out of there at 5 to 4, let me the hell out of here. Just one quick children's vignette. When I was starting to work with Kurtis, Wolfgang, the nurses, these guys are so busy you can only meet them sometimes at midnight, which doesn't bother me, a former actor and stuff. I used to be up, half the night. So I went and got us some coffee. This great Middle Eastern deli. If you haven't been there, you got to go there. At 31st and Telegraph. It's open like till 1 in the morning. I know the woman there, and she says, "My friend, why are you up so late?" And stuff. I said, "Well, I have a meeting at Children's." She said, "At Children's?" And I said, "Oh my God, I said the wrong thing. She's probably had a bad experience." She said, "Wait, oh my God, what's going to happen?" And so I'm holding the coffee, and she comes out with this gigantic, but I mean humongous, silver foil pan of lamb, hummus, baba ganoush, chicken. I said, "I didn't order this, Sam." She says, "I know you didn't, my friend. You tell them this is from their friend Samantha at 31st and Telegraph." I said, "Did they order it?" She says, "No. You don't understand. They saved my niece." When you get to do that kind of work. Anyway, to hear a story like that at midnight, I'm carrying the thing in, all the security, "Who are you? What's this pan?" I said, I hadn't done this kind of work. I never dreamt of being in healthcare, but once I got it, I said, my God, it's my preference. They're saving lives. They're saving lives every day. I started to watch the docs and the nurses sitting with the families in the waiting room at 3 in the morning. I said, my God, what's happening? They said, they need us. It's a big thing to have something wrong with your kid. So now, of course, it's great because we've moved the work we've been at Texas Children's, we've been at Mass General. It's all a Berkeley deal between one Berkeley student and a team at Berkeley. And I have great hope that this is a healthcare revolution. So anything you'd like to know, just stand up so everybody can hear. So just come up here so we can come. Okay? And this is, okay. Take it away, sir.
So a question for the doctor.
You please.
I have family and friends that are in the medical practice, a lot of them techs, delivering babies and whatnot. And one of the things is that, they're on their feet 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. And it seems like the hierarchy, as you mentioned, actually affects their home because they're extremely tired when they get home. They've been under a lot of, stress at work, and sometimes they're working a day shift or a night shift and working with different doctors, per se. So when you say that you're bridging that gap of communications, where do you find the time to do that? It's such a stressful environment, when you're looking at patients and communication and time, it's kind of constrained. So how do you, what do? You do like a picnic afterwards? You do like barbecue? How do you, because I could see that in a lot of business organizations as well, where the supervisor, the boss, the owner, doesn't have a lot of time
Yeah.
to do that. So anyways, how do you go about that?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I look forward to the day that we get a hospital-wide email from the leadership that says, I don't care what you're doing, 2 Saturdays from now, we're all going to stop and we're going to get together and do this. Or we are mandating, every department has this plan to do. Unfortunately, I've come to accept that we can't wait. We can't wait for that to just be given to us. I think it's a myth to think that time is just going to miraculously appear, especially with what goes on in our workplaces, and that's true for all workplaces. I think it's just like anything else. In the chaos of being a neurosurgeon, I may have planned to come to work today and just do my clinic, but then the helicopter lands and the head trauma shows up. And you know what? So much for those plans. This takes priority. And I think it's just like anything else in life. You know, you're at work and you had a plan for the day, but you got a call that your kid is sick. You make it happen. You know, it's all on each of us to say, you know, I know this is going to be painful, but I gotta do this. You know, this is just too important to not do. I'm not saying you have to do it every day for this many times, and don't disrupt the rest of your life to accommodate this. But at some point, you just like all important things, you have to prioritize something very important that you know is going to be meaningful and pay dividends in the end. And you can do it, you know, maybe you won't have an entire day set aside, but if you're in a meeting and you remember some core means of communicating the appropriate way, perform it, you know, for the group. Let them see by example, this is how I talk to people. You know, maybe you should think about talking to people that way too, you know. Maybe short of calling people out, you know, if you're in a leadership position and you're interacting in a meeting and someone's mistreating someone verbally, you know, you say, hold on one second, come on, we can't talk to each other like that. You know, just engage in, you know, and interject your own experience and your learning to whatever walk of life, whatever scene you may be, whether it's in a conference room or a hallway or in an operating room. You take the opportunity when it presents itself. You know, if it's 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there, awesome. If it's a day, even better, but you can't wait.
Give him a big hand, that's great. We'll take one more question. Very good.
So I thank you so much for sharing your story, Dr. Auguste. I'm wondering if this important work, if you're planning to measure how it might impact patient outcomes.
That's a good question. That's a really, really good question. I think we just have to put some thought into how we, you know, now you're drifting back into my scientific world of like, now prove to me that X equals, you know, Y. Yeah, I think it may be a few degrees of separation, but I do believe that we'll be able to link, you know, connect the dots after the fact. I think it'd be quite difficult to try and do it as it's happening, but I don't see why. I mean, when you're talking about better communication, you could really focus it into a doctor talking to a patient kind of communication. You know, don't talk to me like I'm an idiot. You know, I'm actually pretty smart. I just came to your office because I got this problem, and I've done my own background. So don't talk to me like I know nothing. Treat me with respect. That's a fundamental thing that, you know, kind of what we're covering here. Treat each other with respect, listen to each other. That can be zoomed into just 2 people in a room, doctor and patient. So if you're going to measure what maybe questionnaires, how am I doing? You know, well, how do you think I'm doing? And, you know, maybe because my performance on these how am I doing exams are getting better, maybe my patient retention rates are improving. Like people are choosing to stick with me and stick with our hospital. You know, all those kinds of. I mean, we could think outside the box about how to do it, but I have to think that there's a connection between what we do in these workshops and how it translates to the overall greater good and greater outcome. But.
And on just strictly a qualitative place, again, seeing more medical personnel sitting in the lobby all night long, holding the hands of parents who are worried. I mean, there's nothing worse. That's a qualitative measurement. It's not numbers. But I said, what's going on? They said, I can't leave these people. I'm their only hope. So that's very, very much there. We'll be around for a few moments. First of all, I want to thank you for being a great audience. And I want to thank Dr. Auguste for taking his time on a Saturday to come to UC.